Exo Fighters, welcome back to our Advanced Exosuit Guide series for Exoprimal. We are nearing the end with covering all current suits available in the base game, but first, we do have to discuss the favorite choice for tanking, Roadblock. If you haven't checked yesterday's video, 10 new exosuit variants are also coming soon to the game with brand new abilities and possibly modules, which means that will likely require 10 more advanced guides to see how those suits work. So if you're interested to see those, make sure to subscribe. For the very basics of Roadblock, I still recommend my Ultimate Classes video, but here I'll go through Roadblock's core mechanics, their exclusive modules and how they work, and then we'll discuss the recommended PvE and PvP builds to use in the game. But this episode is unique as a special guest is also going to help us. A respected level 100 Roadblock player Gladiatrix from the community Discord will also chime in with their thoughts on how to play Roadblock best. And if you're interested in their written guide, it is also linked in the description of this video. Roadblock is a defense specialist tank exosuit mainly used to shield themselves and their team from dinosaurs or enemy damage, but they are far more than just a portable shield to hide behind, as Roadblock's main strength, I would say, is their ability to control the battlefield and the flow of the game to make it easier for everyone. A hidden core ability we should talk about first is that while Roadblock is holding their shield up, they actually gain a constant defense buff on themselves that equals a 30% damage reduction. So while the shield itself is capable of blocking 2500 damage from one certain angle, Roadblock is also enjoying a sizable defense buff from anything that slips through. Now the first core trick I'd like to share as Roadblock player is that I think the taunt ability is something that is relatively clunky to first get used to, as you get surrounded by all the hordes attacking you after a taunt, and it might feel that you can't use your shield after properly, which is why I recommend combining Taunt with Skid Dodge, Roadblock's dodge ability, to then jump backwards or into any direction, which will allow you to draw attention to your front shield after you have successfully taunted everything around yourself, and you'll see you instantly got most enemies from behind you in front of your shield. This is one of the main benefits also for using Skid Dodge and Taunt together in order to control the battle. Taunt is also capable of taunting all large dinosaurs in the game, but the trick is that you might have to get closer as the range isn't that long, and if the assault exosuits are constantly attacking, you might also have to taunt a little bit longer to get that aggro on you, which will be indicated by a line jumping from the dinosaur to your Roadblock. So make sure you taunt large monsters as you definitely can. Another not so obvious mechanic is Roadblock's overdrive ability, Storm Drive. It conjures a giant tornado to disable enemies. At the end of this overdrive, you have options available to you to either shoot out a tornado into a direction, or to let it end by itself, and I usually see players shooting it out to gather more hordes or in hopes to deal more damage, but leaving it end by itself is also a very great option. I would dare say it might be even the better option most of the time for PvP, as this way Roadblock ends the overdrive with a powerful slam attack on everyone that also applies a brief stun effect. This way you can always choose between repositioning your enemies or stunning them for an extra duration. Now for the modules, Roadblock is quite a lot of fun, and I said Gladiatrix is also going to help us in this section. Our first category is between Tower Shield and Knuckle Duster, an option between more attacking-based Roadblock versus strengthening their shield, and while first this might look interesting, the choice might be a lot more simple. Tower Shield is a very simple and straightforward module that needs no extra explanation. It increases your shield's durability from 2500 health to 3500, allowing you to block more damage and thus also control the battlefield longer.
Tower Shield increases Roadblock shield HP from 2500 to 3500. What this means is you're going to have better management for PvE wave management. You're also going to have more options in PvP. With this mod, you could block almost the entire duration of a Deadeye Overdrive. You could block much more primary fire from a barrage, like an enemy barrage, or even a Vigilant. The problem with this mod is without it, your shield just kind of evaporates to damage, especially in PvP. In PvE, where there's a lot more enemies, without it, it's harder to navigate kind of controlling tempo. When you're in PvE and higher level maps, spawn rates are significantly faster. Without Tower Shield, you're pretty much gimping your effectiveness by half. I would say about 50%.
Now Knuckle Duster on the other hand is more attacking based module that increases your fist's damage by 10%, which isn't all that much unfortunately, but its main draw is supposed to be the increased ability to stun dinosaurs and the defense boost while attacking. The added stun is unfortunately not that effective, as it still takes a considerable time of 10 attacks to the head to stun a large dinosaur, and the defense boost you gain meanwhile is equivalent of the shield defense of 30% reduction. So as I said, it's for more aggressive players who would like to punch more, but it comes at a great cost of not controlling the battlefield and not doing what Roadblock is best at.
Knuckle Duster, it's primarily used for stunning large dinosaurs. It's the replacement mod for Tower Shield. In my personal opinion, Knuckle Duster doesn't have a place in the current meta. It just takes a lot to get value out of this mod. It's really redundant to add this with the other blue mod that I typically recommend, Stun Blast. I wouldn't replace Tower Shield with this mod simply because of the reasons I mentioned for Tower Shield being so good. Like, there's no stun on this for PvP. It only gains value when you're hitting dinosaurs, and our job is not to do damage, but it's to control the fight. So the primary way you control the fight, as of right now with Roadblock, is to shield. Knuckle Duster doesn't serve to make us more aggressive. Actually, it's harder to be aggressive with this mod than without it. By far, I prefer Tower Shield. Tower Shield is just too strong. There's just no feasible way that 10% damage on our left clicks replaces 1000 HP on our shield.
So the conclusion here is that Knuckle Duster likely requires some buffs to make it better and allow Roadblock to be somewhat of a harassing exosuit, but for now, you give up too much by attacking. Our second category is our skill modifiers of our Shield Blast or our Taunt ability, both of them being extremely useful modules depending on your playstyle and the games you're playing. Shield Blast is a module that will reduce the knockback of the ability and instead replace it with added stun effects to both dinosaurs and enemy exosuits. Against dinosaurs, this module allows Roadblock to stun almost all large dinosaurs and topple them to the ground with just 2 or 3 stun blasts aimed at their weak spot, usually their heads, which will give a large window of opportunity for any team to deal some terrible damage. Alternatively, it is also an excellent PvP ability to disable enemy exosuits.
I think Stun Blast is a fantastic mod. It adds a massive amount of stun damage to Shield Blast. What it does is it makes it nearly a guaranteed stun or knockdown on large dinosaur in PvE. It does stun enemy exosuits as well. So the stun applies during the knockback animation when you're in PvP. Specifically, if you go to knock somebody off the map, this guarantees that they're going to die. In PvE, this applies stun damage to dinosaurs when you hit them in their weak spot, specifically the head, with a direct impact from the middle of the shield. That could definitely help speed up clear times for PvE.
The other module is Legendary Taunt, a seemingly not so powerful module that becomes incredible once you understand how Roadblock works. Legendary Taunt gives your taunt a whole new feature that while you're actively taunting enemies, you will be now recovering the durability of your shield. This requires you to actively bash your shield against targets, otherwise it won't work. But the effect is 100% increased speed to recovering your shield's health, whether it is broken or not, which is a massive increase for Roadblock's effectiveness.
Legendary Taunt is what makes Roadblock one of the best PvE suits in the game. It's the ability to refill its shield while it's maintaining threat on enemies is kind of unparalleled. You don't have that with the other two tanks. When you're moving, you can move the enemy with you. Being able to refill your shield means that you can block more damage. It means that while you're refilling your shield, the fact that you're taunting is really good because it means you're dragging enemies to you. What that means for your team usually is repositioning an enemy in a spot where they could die faster, they're not dealing damage to your team and things like that. So I do consider this a PvE tempo mod. I do normally recommend for new players that they take Legendary Taunt simply because it is a consistent mod. It's going to tie very well into the core concept of playing Roadblock in PvE and PvP. Stun Blast does have a bit more of a niche application in that it is stronger in PvP. For PvE, I recommend Legendary Taunt. Legendary Taunt plays very well into modes where you're shielding a lot. If shielding a lot is your thing, I would say go with Legendary Taunt. If you want to be a little more aggressive, go ahead and run with Stun Blast. Just keep in mind that if you're using Stun Blast in PvE, you're not going to refill your shield when you taunt, so you have to be a little more careful about how you use your shield.
To add a little bit to the PvE part, Stun Blast can still be very useful for an on-demand stun against a large dinosaur, for example, but this is mostly for organized teams, as random teams we found don't always make perfect use of a stun, in which case the healing of Legendary Taunt comes more handy. Our third and last options are between Skid Step and Skid Dodge Plus, choosing between extra mobility for Roadblock or a more tanky and aggressive option for those who would prefer punching over holding a shield. Skid Step gives 2 additional uses to your dodge for a total of 3 uses, and doubles the distance that Roadblock is able to jump with it, and while I was very skeptic about this at first, this is indeed a must pick for Roadblock. It makes the Exosuit infinitely more fun and better to play in both PvP and PvE. The Gladiatrix explains really well, while I can show the perfect gameplay footage in the background for it that I just recorded.
I do consider Skid Step to be Roadblock's premier mobility tool. It allows him to maneuver in ways that normally you wouldn't be able to. And it also allows you to quickly reposition yourself to move large dinosaurs, which is very important in this game. In my mind, it's simply fantastic. I do recommend taking it every single one of our builds. The reason for that is it is a 15-meter dash, and you get 3 of them for a tank like Roadblock, who is all about positioning enemies and shielding his team and things like that. This comes as like kind of a natural baseline addition for Roadblock, where losing 2 of these dashes and like having a single dash that is 7 meters shorter and only having 1 of those at a time, it actually becomes detrimental to the suit because you don't have the same flexibility as you normally would.
Alternatively, Skid Dodge Plus is also an option, as it gives minor knockback to your dodge ability with the usual defense buff like other exosuits, except the defense buff for Roadblock is 70% damage reduction instead of the usual 50%, and the duration is 3 seconds, making this mainly a large damage counter, or an overdrive shield I could say, to absorb large amounts of damage at once.
Skid Dodge Plus, it applies a 5-meter knockback and a small amount of stun damage to enemies. Pretty mediocre, to be honest with you, but it does reduce the recovery time for Roadblock's dash, so like the ending portion of his animation, I think it's like a 1/4 second faster. The main potatoes of this mod is the damage reduction though. You get a defense buff whenever you use Skid Dodge Plus, and it gives you a 70 to 75% mitigation buff. Normally, you would take this mod if you are in love with the knockback, or if you truly find that you need the mitigation during PvP, or recharge periods for your shield in PvE. Now, the thing about this is, Roadblock gets a defense buff from holding his shield up, from holding up his ballistic wall. This mechanic, this defense buff that you get from Skid Dodge Plus, does not stack with the defense buff that you get from your holding up your ballistic wall. I don't think that a single 8-meter dash with a defense buff is good enough to replace 3 15-meter dashes in PvE or PvP, simply because you're limiting your mobility for the sake of a 3-second defense buff that you don't need.
My personal opinion after trying them is that Skid Dodge Plus is also a really cool overall option for a PvP niche, but once you try the mobility of Skid Step and learn how to move Roadblock to have basically 100% uptime on shielding your team in whatever situation, and you just get that insane extra mobility, this just becomes the more fun option from the two. With that said, let's take a look at Roadblock's recommended builds. For PvE, we will use Tower Shield, Legendary Taunt, and Skid Step. Tower Shield is self-explanatory, it gives you 1000 bonus health to your shield. It's great for hordes and also large dinosaurs, including Dominators trying to gank your team. This allows you to protect your team longer, which means more damage thanks to you. Legendary Taunt further enhances this ability of yours, while also allowing you to maintain your taunt on hordes without feeling like a waste of time. So just like a lot of footage shown in the video, the longer Roadblock can control the battlefield in PvE especially, the better. Finally, we use Skid Step because of the extra mobility it gives to us to have an instant ability basically to be wherever we want, and just because it's extremely fun. As a rig choice, I've also been converted to use Catapult as Roadblock. Now you have 3 dodges and a catapult to position yourself properly or give you escapes when you need them. Trust me, it's pointless explaining this, you just have to try and see it for yourself. It is incredibly fun. For PvP, the build is very similar. We use Tower Shield for extra shield durability, but we switch Legendary Taunt to Stun Blast to have an on-demand enemy exosuit stun, which is especially important as most of the ganks currently are from enemy melee exosuits, and so with Stun Blast we can easily counter a Zephyr or even a Murasame trying to get in close, or like Gladiatrix mentioned, it is a 100% working way to knock enemy teams down into pits if given the opportunity, thanks to the added stun. For a third module, it is still Skid Step. If anything, in PvP it becomes even more important to be able to reposition properly, and this gives Roadblock once again 100% control over how they want to use their abilities for offense or defense. And that is our Roadblock guide, everyone. It was really fun collaborating and getting help from Gladiatrix for this guide. Hope you liked the video and we were able to tell you and show you extra information for how Roadblock works or how to use them in your games. Making this guide at least made me fall in love with the Exosuit, as it might be the most fun tanking playstyle I've ever experienced in a game. It's not just passive but satisfying like most games, but it's actually a very active and mobile playstyle while maintaining that extra satisfying aspect that we all love them for. Thank you for joining for another guide, Exo Fighters. I greatly appreciate all the support. More guides will be coming as soon as I'm ready with them, and also get ready for additional videos for Savage Gauntlet or the soon-to-be-released August Alpha variant Exosuit guides. Thanks for watching, you all, take care, and I'll see you the next time.